Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming for this installment of our webinar series about the You ME Registry. Really excited to have you all join us today. I'm also joined by Ovid Amate, the CEO of Solve ME. Just really excited to dig into some of what we're learning with this registry. You know, we've been open now for about 6 months, and we recently reached a milestone of 2,000 participants enrolled. So we're really thrilled to be at this point. So with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off first and ask a survey question of you. We wanna learn more about you. So soon you'll see a survey question box populate on your screen. And we just wanna know if you are a person with ME/CFS, someone with long COVID, researcher or clinician, a caregiver who, or a loved one of someone with ME/CFS or long COVID, or if you're someone else. So, just give you guys a few seconds to answer that, and I think we'll probably close the poll in a few seconds here. Looking for the results. So we've got about 79% of people are a person with ME/CFS, 2% are someone with long COVID. We've got 4% are researcher or clinician, and 7% are caregivers. As well as 9% who are someone else, who are just interested in listening in. So welcome to all of you. And it's really great to see a few folks from the long COVID community. As I mentioned, you know, we are now enrolling folks with long COVID into the registry as of last week. So it's a brand new kind of entry point into the registry. And so we're really thrilled to have all of you with us. And next up, I'm going to hand it off to Ovid Amate, who's going to speak to a bit about the vision of the registry and what we think the potential is for this community tool for research.
Thank you, Allison. So it's really important to step back for a moment and just remember, what was the vision? Why did we create this data set? And I think from my personal experience working with rare genetic diseases, the power of registry is incredible. I've worked on diseases that were based on just a single gene that goes wrong. And even then, when you have this global perspective and understand how a disease manifests itself in different places around the world, you get very important insights that can really lead to the identification of causes and potential treatments. So that was really the thinking behind this effort, was to create a global registry that will be uniting data from participants around the world, and therefore we'll be able to identify some perhaps subtypes, different aspects of causes, and potentially things that do work for some individuals that can help us understand how that could be extrapolated to many other people. So the You ME Registry and Biobank is a collection of patient-reported data. These are all the things that you fill out in your report, either on a regular basis or in particular time points. And the idea would be to connect that with samples. That could be, for instance, blood or other types of biosamples that could really provide additional data connected to the experience with the disease. So at this point, as Alison already mentioned, obviously we started back in May with the You ME Registry specifically aimed at the ME/CFS community. And since we now understand that there are at least many similarities between ME/CFS and what many people who had COVID and now continue to experience symptoms beyond the acute infection, there are many similarities. So we feel that from a research perspective, and really to help all of us understand better what it is going on, it is important to be able to collect the data in a very similar way. So we've recently launched the portal for long COVID, people with long COVID to begin to participate in the registry. And in fact, we just did that last week. So that is really the basis for what we're hoping to do here. And of course, having this large data set, potentially the largest one right now from a global perspective, hopefully will give us a lot of additional things to work on. And really, this serves the entire community. This is meant to be an open source data set that researchers from all over the world will be able to use. So maybe we can do a deeper dive. And Alison, if you'd like to go ahead and share more of what have been done since May.
Yeah, absolutely happy to. And thanks for sort of the higher level of kind of the driving force behind the registry. So just to start off, I was going to show this graphic that demonstrates how You ME works. So you can see on the right, you start with number 1. The community is made up of people with ME CFS, those with long-term symptoms of COVID, and control volunteers. And controls for the COVID cohort include people that had COVID but fully recovered, because we're interested in having that comparative data so we can understand susceptibility and resilience to the development of those long-term effects. Then all the folks who want to join the registry sign up using a secure web portal. They review an informed consent, and if they decide to proceed with participating, fill out a kind of battery of baseline assessment surveys, including symptoms, quality of life, functional status, inventory of fatigue, and if you're someone with ME CFS, a disease history about onset triggers. We've got a lot of kind of opportunities to provide narratives for things, which we're really excited about. And then from there, those that experience symptoms with regularity can download the You ME tracking app, which we're really, we think is a really fundamental tool, both from the perspective of data collection and capturing how these complex diseases wax and wane and change over time, as well as how they differ between individuals, and getting that kind of moving picture of the illness versus a single snapshot that a survey or an office visit with a doctor might be, is really pivotal. And then in addition, it's a tool that allows someone to see their own data and better understand their own illness. From there, all of this data is aggregated into a secure database that is then de-identified into a longitudinal data set for research. Researchers and even, if you're not in an academic setting, a community member will eventually be able to apply to access that de-identified data for a specific research question. And then, as Ovid mentioned, a directed goal of the registry is also to link it to a biorepository where we can bank biosamples, whether it be blood or other samples that can, be paired with that kind of phenotypic data. And so that's just a bit of an overview of how it works. And from here, I want to give you guys a little view of what the registry interface looks like. So as I mentioned, once you sign up, you fill out a set of surveys. And from there, this is sort of your hub for the entire You ME registry. You can see this is a profile for someone who has ME CFS. There's pages for my conditions where you can create an ongoing log of any other diagnoses that you have. You can create a log for any treatments that you've taken historically and treatments that are currently active for you. And this is our survey center where you can view previously entered data, take one-time surveys, and continue contributing data through this little hub here. In addition, there's a link to download the You ME app for those with ME CFS and those who have COVID. And in addition, this is something, again, as part of the spirit of the registry wanting to be transparent and share data back to the community who contribute their own data. For those with ME CFS, we report back the case criteria that you fulfill based on the scoring of a symptoms assessment, which was developed by our partners at the UK ME CFS Biobank. And it's not a replacement for a diagnosis, but it's just a bit of additional information that we think is valuable, especially for those that have barriers to getting a diagnosis from a clinician. This is just a peek of the conditions dashboard. Again, we're collecting pretty robust data. So from here, someone can add the condition name, the age of onset, whether or not the condition is still active, and also record whether or not the condition is controlled or stable. And then here's a bit of a peek at the treatments dashboard. We've been seeing some incredible data coming in from people that have an incredible amount of historical information about treatments that they've tried. We have data fields for the name, the root dose frequency, whether it helped, which symptoms it helped with, what that relief was like for you. And we're also continually reassessing this interface and seeing how we can make it better. A lot of folks try things that aren't necessarily medications. We want to adapt this so that it's able to capture other types of interventions as well. And so that'll be coming up. And so before we get any further, we're going to ask you guys one more survey question. We're curious to know whether or not you've already joined the You ME registry. So you should be seeing that poll launched to you. And I'll just give you guys a bit more time. We're getting close to half of you that have voted. Let's let it inch up a bit more. Really would love to know how many of you have already signed up. Great, so we have nearly 40% of people that are already in, which is so exciting to hear. And we have 63% who have not yet joined. So I'm really interested to know that. I'm really pleased that so many are in, to be honest. We hope to convince some of you to also join the community and start contributing your data. So as Ovid mentioned, we launched back in May, and so this is a bit of a look at how many folks have enrolled since then. We've just surpassed 2,000. We're so excited about that. Again, one of the main goals of this registry is to amass a large data set and get as many, tens of thousands of people entering their data as possible. You can see the breakdown here of people with ME/CFS versus those who enrolled in the ME/CFS study as controls. This number is a little lower. We are a directed aim for us in the new year is to make sure we can get closer to this ME/CFS number and get a really good kind of age and sex matched control cohort that can be used for comparative data as well. And we just launched the COVID portal last week, and so we have 70 folks that are in and signed up and starting to enter their data. And I also wanted to show you guys a bit of a view of where we're seeing registrations from. So I know we're all used to looking at maps as they relate to the pandemic, and so it might be a nice break to see a map that shows something positive, which is people contributing their data for science and working together to help solve some complex problems. And so you can see this will be a bit of a time lapse. So this was starting in May, we're getting towards June. We're seeing a lot of clustering in some more metropolitan areas, also in areas where there are ME/CFS expert clinicians, in Florida, for instance, there's a major center there, in the Bay Area as well. I mean, I think one of the things that makes me really excited about this map is not only the fact that it's lighting up and we're seeing registrations from all over, but, where we're seeing registrations are areas in which the ME/CFS population in particular have been underserved. There's a lot of ME/CFS experts in certain areas of the country. There's only maybe about 10 to 15 that are serving patients with expertise in ME/CFS. And so the fact that this kind of online registry enables people in other geographic areas to sign up is a major strength of this approach to research. And so it's really nice to see some of these, areas populate. And I apologize, it's just the continental US. We also have signups in Alaska and Hawaii, but just due to space constraints, I couldn't include it. But we see you guys and we appreciate your registrations. That's a bit of a look at, with the numbers that we're seeing and where we're seeing enrollment from. Next up, I'm just gonna give a bit of a look at just two kind of major demographic stats. You can see here the biological sex split. We're seeing quite a lot of registrations from female, about 80%, which won't be surprising to most because it's understood that this disease is highly prevalent among women. So that's something that we're hoping, there's some thinking that men are sometimes underrepresented in the research around ME/CFS. And so we hope the registry might open up more opportunities for men who are impacted to also participate. And then on the right here, you can see the average age is 51. Our youngest participant is 18, and the oldest actually just turned 95 this year, right after registering. So that was really neat to see. We have a pretty good distribution, although the younger age cohort is probably underrepresented. But something, again, that I think is exciting about this as a research tool is that the over 65 population has also often been under-researched. And I think that age group is very anxious to contribute their data and knowledge and, to research. And so the fact that this registry allows for them to participate in research as well, so we can have a better understanding of how ME/CFS impacts older populations is really exciting. Okay, next up. I just wanted to give a bit of a peek at what we're seeing in the ME/CFS group as far as diagnosis. We're seeing that 85% are reporting that they have a diagnosis by a healthcare provider, whereas 15% are self-diagnosed or self-identified. Previously, this split for us was a bit weighted more heavily towards those that were diagnosed by a healthcare provider. And so it's recently started to grow in the sort of self-diagnosed group, which I actually think is a really positive sign, as we know from a lot of community-based studies by like Professor Len Jason and others, the rates of diagnosis are quite high. And so if we can do anything to help capture those people who aren't already looped in with a clinician that's knowledgeable about the disease, the better. So we're kind of glad to see that number tick up for those who are self-diagnosed. The average age of diagnosis is 42. And then this is just a graph showing the type of healthcare provider who diagnosed the participants. So we're seeing quite a lot of general practitioners, a good proportion of ME/CFS experts, some infectious disease specialists, neurologists, and in the other category, it was quite a lot of rheumatologists. So this is just one piece of data, but we have a lot of other data that we can start to look against some of these variables with. Like, for example, average age of diagnosis. We also collect, age of symptom onset. And so understanding the lag time between age of symptom onset and age of diagnosis will be really useful. And so we're really keen to mine the data to see what characteristics there are among people who are, have more ready access to a diagnosis, and get a better understanding of that as well. This next series of slides is going to just be taking a look at a very specific survey in the registry called the Karnofsky Performance Status Survey. It's been used for decades in clinical practice, especially with actually oncologists. And recently, a few years ago, a research group took the Karnofsky score, which was very well suited for clinicians. It was very like dry language, very clinical, and they turned it into more of a self-report instrument. And they made it open access. And so we took a look at that instrument and we further adapted it to make it even more well suited for the ME/CFS and now the long COVID communities, we think, and built it out in the registry to allow for self-report. So you can see the question flow goes whether or not someone's able to carry on with normal work or activity. And from there, if you say no, you're asked about your mobility and whether or not you need assistance. And so you kind of end up with this spectrum of functional capacity that is a lot more nuanced than a lot of the time, at least in ME/CFS studies, severity has been defined by being house or bedbound versus not. And we think this gives a lot more information about the degree of debility that someone with ME/CFS or with long COVID might be experiencing. And so this is kind of the structure of the questions. And once the participant moves through it, a score is returned to them that's then recorded. And so this is kind of the breakdown that we're seeing. In the cross-cohort breakdown, we're seeing about 10% with no impairment, 15% with mild impairment, 37% with moderate impairment, and severe impairment is about 39%. And just to go back really quick and give you another reminder, this category of severe impairment where you have very significantly decreased mobility and ability to care for yourself. Moderate is sort of that you need some assistance or that you have difficulty with mobility. And the 100 category is people without symptoms who can carry on their normal work, whereas people with a smaller amount of disability are those with mild or moderate symptoms, but who can still engage with normal activity or work. So that's kind of where those categories come from. And then we also took a look at the different portions among the cohorts. And so you can see here in the ME/CFS category, there's a significant proportion who have severe impairment based on Karnofsky, an almost equal proportion with moderate impairment, with a smaller amount that have mild impairment. And just, I think it really speaks to the impact this disease has. And we were actually glad to see the proportion that have severe impairment. We weren't glad to see that, but one of the things, again, with the registry is increasing participation of populations that are difficult to get into research studies. And so the registry, we think, provides an opportunity for people that are more severely ill, for example, who can't leave the house, to participate in research. Something that doesn't show up on the ME/CFS kind of pie chart here is that there is a really small number who have no impairment, because there's a few in our registry who had ME/CFS but now consider themselves to be fully recovered. And so that's another kind of group that we're really interested in, because we collect narratives about disease recovery and understanding if there was something in particular that made someone feel better. And so that's also a group that I think we actually really want to grow and maybe push out a specific questionnaire to about their recovery stories. And then here you can see in the controls, many more of them are not impaired. They have a score of 100, which is not surprising. And then some amount have mild, and even fewer have moderate and severe. And so some of you might be surprised that there's any impairment in the control, the control cohort. We often message it as a healthy control cohort, but it's just really more of a term that's easier to use. It's really a non-ME CFS cohort. And within this grouping, those that have severe or moderate impairment, we allow for people to register who have another disease that might help further ME CFS research and research into their own illness. For example, in this category, there's a number of people that have orthostatic intolerance or other conditions that are related to ME CFS. And so that's why you see reflected here a small proportion who have some amount of impairment. And then this is just an early look at the post-COVID cohort. So we're starting to see, kind of a more even breakdown, and we anticipate this will change a lot potentially as we enroll more people, and over time as some people maybe have more of a resolution of their symptoms or long-term impacts from the disease versus those who maybe convert into a more chronic state of illness. So that's just a little snapshot at the Karnofsky performance scale, and we think it's a really important measure when you combine it with other information like quality of life that we collect through the short form 36, which is a survey that's used across a lot of studies to try and get at quality of life, and combine it with other other variables that we can really maybe start to define severity of disease with even more clarity in this these populations. Next up, it's another survey question for you guys. Hope you aren't getting sick of them. Before we take a dive into the next section about the mobile symptom tracking app, just curious to know if any of you are already using the mobile app. We have the category for yes, I'm already using the app. No, I'm not, I'm interested, but I haven't started yet. No, I'm not too interested in using an app for tracking, which is totally okay. And then no, I'm a control or I don't experience regular symptoms, meaning just the mobile app, wouldn't be that applicable to you. So I think we can go ahead and close the poll. Okay, so we're seeing that nearly 20% of you are already using the app. 60% are interested but haven't started using it yet. 10% aren't interested in using the app, and 10% the app wouldn't be applicable to them. So in particular, I'd be curious to know, for those that aren't too interested in using an app for their own health tracking, if you're willing, enter, maybe tell us why in the comments box. I'd be really curious to know if there's something that maybe it's just not for you. Maybe you don't want that the ongoing reminder of your health, but would just love to know if there's something about a mobile app that isn't interesting to you.
And also, maybe you could just make a comment on the ability to use the app, particularly in those at this moment where many of us are under a lockdown condition, or we can't really leave our house one way or another. So participating in research through a healthcare provider is quite difficult. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as everyone knows, we're all a bit at the mercy of the pandemic here, and lockdowns have forced many of us to stay at home, which is a state of existence that a lot of people with ME CFS already know very well. But it is kind of with these digital health technologies like the symptom tracking app and the online surveys, there are these tools that will still allow us to participate in research from the comfort of our own home. So even with lab closures and with the uncertainty around patients being able to go to the clinic, the registry and the mobile app have been available for use, and people have been able to contribute data, using these tools. And so, I mean, we obviously we didn't plan for the pandemic. We were already, had developed the symptom tracking app, but it was this tool that was already available that people could still contribute their data and their insights that we could start to form this data set with. And so you can still be kind of like a little scientist from the comfort of your own home using some of these interfaces. And with that said, this is just an initial view of the tracking app. You can see this is the profile screen as it currently is. We have a button, this orange button for tracking symptoms and other factors. You can access a calendar view of your tracking data and view previously entered data and make edits up to for a certain amount of time in the past. You can also manage your profile notification setting. We ask for a default of every 3 days, but you can track as often as daily or as little as once a week. And we also have this graphing functionality. So the first up, I just want to take a closer look at the tracking symptoms screen. So right here on the left-hand side, you can see a screen with symptom names and sliders. The You ME app has 5 kind of core symptoms that automatically populate for everyone. These are highly prevalent among people with ME CFS and increasingly among, we're observing in the symptoms reporting from a lot of the patient-led efforts. These are also very highly prevalent among people with long COVID. So we ask at minimum that folks report on these symptoms, but the app has a high degree of customizability. So you can also add new symptoms that are relevant to your own experience using this add new button. And when you do that, a pre-populated list comes up. So you can search for the symptom that you're looking for. And if it isn't there, then you can also add it as a custom symptom. So we think that's an incredible feature. It's been very popular among the app users that we don't set a limitation necessarily on any symptoms that you want to track. You can also reorder your symptoms, so your priorities for tracking at the top. We use this 0 to 4 scale for a symptom not present to 4 very severe. And you can also record when a symptom isn't present. Just a note on this, we are continually soliciting feedback from people that are in the registry and those who are using the mobile app. And we're always looking for ways to make it better. And so for some, the slider works well, and for others, they want to tap to slide, for example. And so that's something in the new year that we're looking to do, is to improve the UX of this particular feature. So stay tuned. Also, as part of the tracking screens, there's a screen that lets you log your treatments. These treatments populate from the profile that you created at sign up. It brings across all of the symptom names, so you're able to just simply toggle them on or off each day. It has this select all feature, which actually was proposed by a community member. We didn't have this in the initial rollout, and they said, hey, I take all of these almost every day. Can you please add a button that says select all? And so we added it. And anytime you have an update in your kind of treatment list, you can simply click in this link here to go and update it in your profile. We also have a screen for tracking life events, like whether or not you stayed inside all day, which is a reality for a lot of us right now, for example. And it's very similar to the symptoms list, where there's a pre-populated list of life events, but you can also add any customizable life events that are relevant to you. And then we also ask folks to provide a general rating of wellness on a 0 to 100 scale. And finally, this isn't pictured here, but there is a journaling function in the app. So, in addition to all this tracking, you can also just include an entire journal entry about your day, which has been extremely popular. And some of the data that we're seeing from that is really interesting. And we're itching to get it to researchers who can do kind of free text analysis and see what patterns emerge from that data. Just a quick view of the calendar. As you can see the days that you've tracked. You can also see your upcoming push notification schedule. And then this is just a view of the profile settings. You can set your push notifications for the frequency and time of day that work for you, as well as if email notifications are better, you can also set those. And then finally, this is, as we mentioned, we're very, very committed to sharing the data back with the people who provide it. It's not an instance where you submit a survey and it just goes out into the ether and you're not really sure what happens with the data. This feature in the mobile app is a good example of our commitment to make sure that people have access to their own data and that they can get a readout of it that's meaningful for them. And so currently with the graphing functionality, you can track up to 5 symptoms. You can also graph your general wellness score here. And we've added this ability to map across some kind of activity and life events data. So you can see just ahead of this spike in symptoms in this period of PEM that I experienced, I was more physically active than I usually am. And the graphing is at a really good place right now, but again, we're constantly iterating and improving the functionality of these tools and working with the community to see what their priorities are and how we can make things even better. And so there's a few different things in mind that we'd like to add to this and improve with this. And so if you have any ideas, you should submit them to the comments box. And this is just a view of the engagement that we're seeing with the mobile app. About 848 users have tracked using the tracking app, and about 18,000 days of tracking data are logged in the database. This 848 number makes up about 48% of participants that have ME CFS or long COVID. On average, we're seeing that users are logging data on about 88% of those recommended tracking days, which is every 3 days. So we're really pleased with that frequency of data collection. I mean, when you think about a traditional study that asks the survey at a single time point, this is like a wealth of data over time that we're amassing. There's also kind of a spectrum of involvement, which is kind of to be expected. There's a smaller group that are really, really highly engaged and really love using the app, and they log every day, and it's about 14% of people. And there's also a group of people that open the app once and they stop tracking after that. And so we're, continually sending out feedback forms or trying to get at how we can make the app better for people to use or lower barriers to using it. Next up, as I mentioned, we are constantly getting feedback from folks. In July, we sent out a feedback survey, and about 80 people responded, including 42 who were using the mobile app. And overall, the satisfaction was really high, but we aren't satisfied with, just 75% having 7 or higher. We want to get that number higher. And so we're constantly working with community members to implement accessibility improvements and improve app engagement. An example of that is we've had a few requests for dark mode. And so we're prioritizing that on the roadmap for development so that those with light sensitivity and prefer dark mode can have that, as well as those who don't want dark mode can still keep it in the traditional. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you guys directly, what are some of the things with a mobile app that you think should be a development priority for us? The first one is dark mode, which we are definitely planning on, but curious to know if that is still like a really important one for a lot of folks. Another thing we've been interested in developing is a summary kind of report for your doctor. So we have that graphing functionality, but would people be interested in having a PDF emailed to them with certain data fields that summarize in a packet that you could take to your doctor? Some folks don't use a smartphone, so how much interest is there in a desktop version that you can use from your computer if you don't use a smart device? Or a functionality that lets you compare your de-identified data with other people who are using the app, or perhaps it's something else. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I figured that a summary report for your doctor would be a really big one. So it's neat to see that. And I think with the dark mode, I sort of included that option already, having told you guys we're going to do it, but I imagine there's some amount of interest with that as well. 35% who would want a desktop version is really interesting to me, and it's motivating to kind of bump that up in the development list for sure. I've definitely heard it from a few people, but knowing that for those on the webinar that you would want that desktop version, it makes me want to develop it very much. And then kind of that community function that allows you to see other people's data. And if you responded with something else, please put in the comment box what it is you'd love to see developed, because we'd like to know. And this is just a view of the satisfaction with the registry in general. I previously showed you some of the report, the feedback to the mobile app, but this, we're seeing about 75% are rating their overall satisfaction with the registry as a 7 or higher, which is good. We're happy with that, but we do, of course, want to make it even higher. And then this is a net promoter score, which is often used for mobile apps to assess how likely someone would be to recommend the registry to someone they know. And a score over 30 is considered good, but we're going to be working our hardest in 2021 to make that net promoter score even higher. I really quickly wanted to just say thank you. It's just so much. This has been something that I've been working on for a while, along with Sadie and Elle, who's our data registry manager. And it's been a project that I've loved, and doing it with a lot of the community members that I've worked with has been amazing. But beyond that, a lot of you have devoted a lot of time and energy to something. And it means a lot, especially for people that have to manage their energy and the way they spend their time. And collectively, you've answered over 10,000 surveys, and you've contributed over 1 million data points. And we've been open 6 months. And I just think it's just the beginning. We're just scratching the surface of what this data set has the potential to do. And I'm just really appreciative of the partnership of those that have registered and those that have helped build it. So with that in mind, looking forward, I just wanted to speak a bit on what's coming up in 2021. As we mentioned, we want to get lots of numbers of folks in there. So we're going to do a big recruitment push with a focus on underrepresented populations. Currently, our registry is largely reflective of the population of people that ME CFS research has been done with historically. It's predominantly white, and we want to do as much as we can to work with underrepresented communities and get them excited about the registry and wanting to contribute and help co-develop it. In addition, I know this is a very big question for a lot of folks. In early 2021, we will be launching the You ME Registry to international participants. We've been holding off a bit because we're working with specific partners internationally, but very soon we'll be able to open it in Canada and in Europe. We have, IRB approval to open it internationally, and so we're really keen to do that. In addition, we also want to develop out an access point to the registry for people that are between the ages of 12 and 17, so we can get a better understanding of what ME CFS is like in the adolescent years. As I kind of already touched on, we're going to be continually making improvements to the app experience and just the overall capabilities of the registry and to the kinds of data that we can collect. Right now, a lot of it is self-report, but we'd love to kind of expand and take a look at doing other forms of passive data collection like wearables and things like that. And then finally, as mentioned, a very important part of this is the biosample collection. And our goals are to sample more people more often, including those that are house and bedbound, and to bank samples that can support a range of research. And so I'd like to pause there, and Oved, I want to ask maybe what you're most excited about, what we've already accomplished, and what you're most looking forward to in 2021.
Thank you, Alison. This was outstanding, and I think going back to where we started, I think that the idea that we can really collect so much information in a relatively short period of time, and now expand that to do it globally, and really enable people who are in the past were not able to join research, really to understand the scope of the disease, really begin to get a sense of perhaps subtypes and what things can work. And I think that it's just so encouraging to see the community's involvement. And I think it's a research tool. And so we're now building the tool, and very soon we'll be able to apply that in so many different ways. So I think we're off to a wonderful start. And as I wanted just to, you mentioned that we have an IRB approval to conduct a study or to open the registry globally. Could you just help us understand what is the IRB, and how are we regulated, and why is this approval important?
Yeah, of course. And that's good because we also got a question from someone that joined the registry about privacy as well. And so I'm happy to touch on that first. So an IRB just means that an independent board of experts reviews our research protocol and approves it, make sure that it adheres to the highest standards of research that involves human participants. And the database itself, privacy is of the utmost importance to us, and upholding participant privacy is pivotal. And all of the way the data is structured and the way that we collect data is compliant with HIPAA, and it's compliant with GDPR. And we work with legal counsel to make sure that our informed consent documentation is squared away, and that our processes are going to adhere to those highest standards of security and privacy. And so we will never sell your data. We will never disclose any personally identifiable information. Any research any data that's made available for researchers is de-identified, meaning it's stripped of any identifying information. And so we take it extremely seriously, and we understand that it's a really important question for people who are considering sharing their data. And it's one of the most fundamental pieces of this registry, and that'll always be the case. First question we have is from Paul, which is, what kind of samples does one need to contribute to participate in the registry? And so I can take the first piece of this, and then Oved would love to hear your thoughts on the kind of biosample collection we'd like to do. But currently, as a member of the registry, you're not required to provide a biosample. But as I mentioned, one of our goals is to make sure that we bank a range of samples that are useful for research, while also allowing for as many people to be as sampled as we possibly can. And so we're developing out some different processes and standard operating procedures that will let us do that. We've got quite a long history of banking biosamples at Solve, originally set up by Suzanne Vernon, who's now with Bateman Horn. She had the vision to set up a biobank back in 2010. And through that, we've banked a number of blood samples from participants. And so that's going to be a key part of it moving forward, making sure that we have PBMC, which are like the kind of immune cells that float around in your peripheral blood, and making sure we have plasma, and making sure we have samples that can be mined for genetic insights. So all of those things are important to us. And Ovid, I know you have a bit of experience with this, and you've been part of a lot of the conversations we've thought about the best way to collect samples. And so what are some of the things that are on your mind about biosample collection?
Yeah, so one of the tools that we're considering to apply very quickly is using what's known as dried blood spot, which is a very simple way to collect a very small amount of blood. It could actually be just blood from a finger prick. So very similar to what someone with diabetes would do regularly, but just a very small amount of blood, a few drops that you'd put on a piece of paper. It's a specific paper. So it's a card, and it's a very small amount of blood that dries on this card, and the card can be used, can be stored in room temperature, so it doesn't really require any special conditions. And really, the advantage is that everyone can do that again from home. So we want to minimize the burden of collecting some of those samples. The dried blood is an excellent source for getting genomic information and a few other things that could be done directly from that. So that really minimizes the need to go and get a phlebotomy or go to a clinic and things like that. So we're going to try to implement that next year, and of course consider additional ideas beyond that. And I think the other part to remember is that once we have this large data set, there may be some specific research projects that investigators begin to do, and we'll be able to go back and suggest for all of you to participate in a particular study that may be more specific, and then there may be other samples that are going to go along with that study. But we're trying to think of using tools that really minimize the burden and allow as many people to participate and contribute those samples.
Perfect. And we also had a question submitted ahead from Susan, who was interested in how we decide who provides a biosample, like if we have certain criteria about who would provide a biosample. And that's a really important question, because I know that especially in the ME CFS group, you're like extremely highly motivated to participate in research, and you want to like give as much as you can. And so the answer is that there's going to be sort of a prioritization of sample collection based on the degree of confidence that we have in someone's diagnosis, and but it's not limited to that. Like as Ovid mentioned, if we do these dried blood spot cards, the ability to collect samples from a large number of people is exponentially increased, whereas drawing blood and storing blood components is quite expensive. And so we're looking at kind of both approaches, like how can we collect on a really wide group of people, and then how can we do deeper dives and collect more exhaustive biosamples on subgroups, and not only that, but sample over time, or do more creative sampling methods like sampling during a window where someone's experiencing PEM. And so we just think there's a lot of potential to bank samples that will facilitate lots of different kinds of. And then another question is, how long does it take to first sign up and do all of the surveys, to do all the surveys, and how long does it take to do the daily reporting on the app? And that's a question from Susan. So I'm happy to take the general question, then Ovid, I have a specific question for you about that. But in general, to review the informed consent and to register and to sign up, it can take about an hour to two hours, but we allow a 2-week period of time to complete that process. And the onboarding process is the most exhaustive, because we're just collecting those key pieces of information and health history information at baseline. From there, at follow-up time points, this sort of, we call them study visits for data collection, are much, much shorter. And then for the mobile app tracking, to fill out all of the tracking screens should take about 5 to 12 minutes is what I've observed. And as far as the signing up process, both Ovid and myself are controls in the ME CFS cohort. So Ovid, I'm curious, do you know how long it took you when you first signed up?
Yeah, I think all in all, it probably when you do all the surveys, it will probably be probably about 50 minutes altogether. I've done it in several chunks, just partly because of my attention span is limited. But yeah, that's about what it would take, and really breaking. And you can always pause and save where you are, and the system will get you to exactly the same place where you left it off. So it's very very user friendly from that perspective.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to balance trying to make sure we could collect as much data across participants as we could. So we have this sort of directed data collection process where you are guided through the questions we want you to answer. But as Ovid mentioned, you also have the ability to save and come back later. And within that two-week window period of time, you can complete the study visit. And then let's see, some other questions are, will it be possible to share our genome raw data if we already have it sequenced, from Marie? And Ovid, what do you think about the potential for us to take on additional data types in the coming 2021 or beyond?
Yeah, I think that would be critical. I think that the ability to collect those, because really ultimately generating the genomic information is incredibly important. Just the very first step, and of course the analysis and looking really into those those data would really be the challenge. So yes, I will be able to collect it and ultimately create again an open source of information that could be mined by researchers and and individuals, and it's really, that's where the strength of a big data set, that's really where it comes to power, and you identify variants in the genetic code that otherwise we wouldn't really be we wouldn't know how to interpret. But once you begin to see some repeated signals, that's really when it becomes important. So yeah, if there is information that's already available, we'll be able to put it all together in one place for data mining.
I think we have time for maybe just one more question, and we have one from Elaine, who said, I'd love to use the app, but do I have to fulfill certain criteria through the surveys? And the answer is that anyone can use the mobile app. So once you've signed up and completed the informed consent, you can use the same login information and download the mobile app from the store, log in, and begin tracking. So we don't require that you fulfill any certain criteria to use the app. And in fact, even if you're a person without ME CFS, we don't really message you that you need to use the app, because we don't require that you collect data that way. But those individuals can even go to the App Store, download it, enter their profile information, and log in. So we want to make the app as accessible a tool as possible for tracking. So if you haven't already downloaded it and started entering your data and checking out any patterns that you might see yourself and contributing those insights to research, I highly encourage you to do it. So I think we're getting close to the top of the hour here, so it might be time to close out. Ovid, did you have any other kind of last thoughts or questions?
Thank you so much for this overview, and we obviously will continue to do that, because I think that's really it's just so important to share the progress, and of course we look forward to doing this again soon.
Agreed. And just put up this last slide here, just a bit about our motivating values. We believe in community, we empower with information, we insist on progress, and we amplify with collaboration. And we're continually striving to live up to those. And we just really want you to take part in all that's coming in 2021. And so if you haven't already signed up, you can learn more and sign up at youmeregistry.com. If you have any ideas or thoughts, feel free to get in touch with us at research@solvecfs.org. We're looking for people to sign up who have ME CFS, who had ME CFS and now consider themselves recovered, people who have had COVID, and controls. So it's a global ask for signups. And once you get to youmeregistry.com, the sign up page will let you know where to go. So just thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. This webinar series is brought to you by Solve, free of charge. And so you can register for any future webinars we have at the link there. If you want to stay up to date with our newsletters, there's a link to sign up to our newsletter listserv, as well as our print newsletter, Research First. If you have the ability to donate, there's a donate link there. In addition, to contributing your data this season, you can contribute dollars to help us continue to build this fundamental tool for research. And again, there's that youmeregistry.com link as well. Also, our social channels, get social with us. There's Twitter @PleaseSolveCFS, the YouTube channel, and like us on Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.